The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Peace means taking into account the dignity of other people and the fact that there are other people who have certain rights.
Peace in the Middle East basically will come when the clergy in the mosque on Friday preach it and when the rabbis in the synagogue on Saturday preach it. During the time of Camp David I, you had political leadership that was able to contain that type of religious fervor. What the country needs is some prescient understanding of what is going to happen in the future.
Tune in when the Leon Charney Report begins a special series on the Israeli-Palestinian question.
Welcome to another Leon Charney Report, and tonight it's going to be all Israel, Saudi Arabia, Arafat. We have three preeminent journalists. One is John Wallach, who I've known for a long time, was a fantastic journalist, probably is writing now, but he's done something incredible in this world. He's put together a thing called Seeds of Peace, which really brings a lot of people together, Arab and Jew included. He'll talk to you about that in a minute. Yigal Schleifer, who's first time on the show, he writes for the Jerusalem Report, and David Margolick, who's been on a few times, but he's back from Israel visiting with Arik Sharon, etc., and he'll fill us in on that scope. What an interesting week. John, I got to start with you. You were around during the Camp David I days. We know each other a long time. Seeds of Peace, first of all, explain that to our audience.
Seeds of Peace is a detox program for the hatreds that often culminate in violence and terror. We bring together children from 23 countries, aged 13 to 16, about 500 every summer. They spend 3.5 weeks together in Maine at a summer camp, playing sports together, living together, eating together, and spending 3 hours a day in what we call coexistence sessions, which they talk about all the difficult issues: terrorism, Jerusalem, security, and basically when you sit down 6 Palestinians and 6 Israelis, or 6 Indians and 6 Pakistanis, the tears flow. It's a very dynamic, cathartic experience for them, and they bond by the end of the summer. There's a lot of hate that has to come out in the process, but it's therapeutic, and these kids go home as close friends. We've had 2,000 youngsters. I don't want to call them children because these are children of war. And they go home as good friends, and they maintain their commitment to Seeds of Peace.
So after the Intifada, do they still maintain friendship?
Well, we have a center in Jerusalem. We have a 5,000 square foot center in Jerusalem, and we try as best we can to support their friendships. Obviously, physically, it's very difficult for them to see each other because they can't travel, the travel restrictions and the closures and everything else. It's hard for them to see each other. We go and bring them videotapes. For example, we'll videotape 50 or 60 Israeli kids, bring them over so the Palestinians can watch them, and they'll do a videotaping in response. We bring them back to the Israeli kids. We're also doing programs with Israel's Arab population. We're doing programs in Haifa 3 times a week with the Israeli Arabs, or they call themselves Palestinians now, Palestinian Israelis. We've become very active inside Israel, but we're doing everything we can with the Palestinians that that the situation will permit.
What does the government of Israel say about this?
They've been supportive. Every government picks the delegation that comes to Seeds of Peace during the summer.
Really?
The Israeli government has been supportive from day one, and including right-wing governments, left-wing governments, every government.
Well, the last time I saw your children was on the White House lawn when
1993.
Yitzhak Rabin was reluctantly shaking the hand of Yasser Arafat. That's not a great match because Arafat's hand shakes and Rabin didn't want to get in there too quickly.
I asked Leon, I asked Arafat when he walked down the rope line and he greeted the kids. He had said, my wife and I had done a biography of him called Arafat in the Eyes of the Beholder. I asked him, he said at the end of the book, "I'm waiting for an Israeli de Gaulle." And I asked him, "Is Rabin the Israeli de Gaulle?" And he nodded yes. And I think things would have been very different if Rabin had lived.
I'll tell you a story. Weitzman, who was Minister of Science, sent me to Tunis to visit with Arafat, and I did so secretly. And I reported back to Shimon Peres, Chaim Bar-Lev, Ezer Weitzman, and Yitzhak Rabin. You know, the only guy who told me not to go forward with Rabin, with Arafat, was Rabin.
Well, the other side of that story, Leon, is that while we spent the summer of 1989 and 1990 in Tunis interviewing Arafat, we got a message from the American ambassador, Bob Pelletreau, in Tunis, saying an important Israeli would like to see you. I'm passing the message along as the American ambassador here. He'd like you to go to Israel. We flew to Israel. We had no idea who we were going to meet. There's a car waiting for us at the airport. It takes us to the defense ministry. There, in a very small office, sat Yitzhak Rabin. This is 1990, summer of 1990, when he was defense minister in a national unity government. And we briefed him. He wanted to know all about Arafat. We spent 3 hours briefing him about Yasser Arafat. So he was already, this is 2 years before he became prime minister, he was already
I went to see him
very prepared to confront the reality of,
All right, there's a lot of history there, but I want to talk. Yigal, what do you think of Seeds of Peace?
It's a wonderful organization. It was really nice to hear from John that things are going well for them. You know, if you remember, one of the first Israeli Arabs killed when this Intifada started was a Seeds for Peace alum. So the organization has definitely gone through a lot. So it's amazing. He's one of the sort of more tragic stories of this Intifada, really. So it's amazing to hear it's still going on, and I think that's if there's any sort of bright spot in all of this, that's really the fact that Seeds for Peace is still attracting Israelis and Palestinians.
I think no one should be asked to drop their dreams. Okay? Meaning, Hebron, Jericho, Bet El are all names, places that will always be part of Jewish identity, of the Jewish narrative, of the Jewish dream. In the same way that Jaffa and Akko and Yafa and Haifa and all of these will always be part of the Palestinian dream. We will always write poetry about the orange orchards of Jaffa. You can never ask people to give up their dream, but what you can do to them is to make sure that these dreams do not sabotage their lives and realities. And as such, when it comes to the issue of refugees, I do very strongly believe, and I think this is something that's understood by anyone who is serious about the negotiations. This includes Arafat and other Palestinian negotiators. The 8 million refugees will not go back to Israel. Israel was created for one reason, whether you like this reason or not, that's the reality, is to be a homeland of the Jewish people. 8 million Palestinian returning refugees will destroy their dream, and therefore Israel will not accept it. So if you want a peace deal, if you want the end of the occupation, the exercise of the right of return will never happen.
Until this point, no Arab country, and certainly no Arab coalition or community of countries, that's why Beirut and this Arab League meeting are so important in March, has ever come forward and said, we accept Israel's right to exist as a Jewish nation in the region. Only Egypt and Jordan have really done that in signing peace treaties. So in effect, the real importance of this seems to me, again, the public announcement, the public declaration, we're willing to live with a Jewish state as a neighbor.
Particularly coming from the Saudis, who have this certain role in the
I don't want to
Muslim and Arab world.
That itself is important. That's why the Syrians are so angry, I think, because they see that he's giving away a card.
Well, he's
playing a card.
Going to a meeting
he should have saved for a negotiation.
Well, he's already played the law of return card, the right of return card, which is the most extraordinary thing of all.
And I don't think you can have a Palestinian leadership formally renounce the right of return in any meaningful way, neither legally nor politically. But I think it's important for Palestinians to understand that in the end, the State of Israel is not going to sign a peace agreement that allows for the return of millions of Palestinians to the homes of their homes or their grandparents' homes in what is now the State of Israel, to villages that don't exist, that were bulldozed between 48 and 57, to orchards and farms that are now parking lots and mini malls. I mean, it's just not, it's not going to happen. It is not plausible. And so I think that Palestinians need to be prepared for the fact that there's got to be a major bitter compromise on return itself, not so much on the right, but on the return. Those things are different. And that's not to say that a peace agreement with Israel won't benefit the refugees. It will. People get upset on the Palestinian side when they hear this kind of thing, because they say, well, but the rights of the refugees have to be taken into consideration. Well, sure, we for sure, a peace agreement has to do as much as it can, has to gain as much as it can for the refugees. You know, that's essential on moral grounds, on political grounds, on all kinds of grounds. A peace agreement would provide a lot of things to the Palestinian refugees. It would provide them with compensation. It would provide them with a state that they could go to when it becomes a matter of life and death not to be in a state, in Lebanon, in Syria, and elsewhere. It would provide them with a country to represent them internationally on the world stage. It would provide them with a country to issue them passports, of which they could be citizens, whether they live there or not. And it would provide them with an acknowledgement, I think, of their suffering. I think that one of the things that has to happen here is an Israeli acknowledgement of some degree of responsibility for what happened.
One Voice movement came to exist after the collapse of the Camp David II negotiation between Chairman Yasser Arafat and back then Prime Minister Ehud Barak. And the basic assumptions of the movement is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will be solved based on a two-state solution through negotiations and non-violent means. The movement has offices in New York, office in London, office in Tel Aviv, office in Ramallah, and also office in Gaza.
I think the people of Israel are so divided, and I don't know how you bring them together. You know, there was a very good, very smart Hasidic rabbi who my friend saw, Hasidic Rebbe, and who lives in Israel. He says the problem is not with the Palestinians. We will find a way to the Palestinians. The problem is with the Israelis. And I don't know how you overcome that.
I think that if this peace plan really got some momentum going, I mean, this 50-50 split that you're talking about would break down some. I mean, there are all kinds of polls that show that 60-70% support some kind of peace process,
right.
You know?
But
I mean,
that's the problem. I don't think this is a peace plan. I think this is a kind of a vision. It's
right.
kind of a PR stunt. It's a billboard,
at this
but
point,
it's not a plan.
At this point, that may be all that it is. I mean, obviously, it's just an opening gambit. I mean, even they say the borders will have to be adjusted and all of this. Right. But if this thing starts to move forward, and unlike Camp David, there's actually the Arab world, as represented by Saudi Arabia, is behind it, you could see some changes in the Israeli body politic and public opinion.
I think something that's sort of interesting about this Saudi Arabian proposal is how it all sort of came to be, which is Thomas Friedman as this sort of messenger, which is just interesting. I'm just saying it's interesting because it reflects on the role the United States has been playing or not been playing as a broker in the region. And it almost seems that, you know, I mean, this whole situation was created with Thomas Friedman's column and, you know, the print suddenly saying, oh, look, here in my drawer, I have this great little proposal. Funny that you mention it. But I think it still points out the fact that there's a certain lack of involvement and sort of clear thinking on the State Department's part or this administration's part as to what to do with this region. I think that's one of the big problems.
I wrote a column for...
That's the danger of this, I think. Yeah. Because this is an easy way for everybody to get out of starting to re-engage in a serious way on the ground.
My name is Sapir Handelman. I just came back from Harvard University. I'm teaching at Tel Aviv University. I started my own initiative. It's called the Minds of Peace. I won the most important prize in peace and conflict in Europe. And I don't like to speak about solutions. I like to speak about process. And I think that one of the missing components in every peacemaking initiative in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the involvement of the people. And without the people, it's not going to work. Because peace process progress, violence increase. So each side believes that there's not human beings on the other side. So what I started to do and what I'm doing the idea is to establish a major public negotiating congress. A congress that invites representatives of the Israelis and representative of the Palestinians to discuss, debate, and negotiate solution to the tragic situation. And they are going to decide what is going to be the solution. 1 state, 2 states, 3 states. The question is how to do this kind of congress. We don't have, like in South Africa, Nelson Mandela and de Klerk that understood the importance of the involvement of the people. So we begin to think that this kind of a Congress can grow from the grassroots level. And I started to do mini congresses around the United States, Canada, and in Israel and Palestine. It's called the Minds of Peace Experiment. It's very easy, and I'm not going to speak a lot. It's 6 Israelis from the entire political spectrum meet 6 Palestinians from the entire political spectrum in front of an audience. They have 5 sessions to reach peace agreement. Every negotiation is 2 hours, 1 hour and a half between the 2 delegations. Half an hour the audience is allowed to participate. There's a broad audience. 2 ground rules. The first one is not to demean each other, not to put down, to show respect. And the second is not to go to historical debate. I did to you, you did to me, to try to look to the future. We have people from all the political spectrum, settlers, right-wingers, Palestinians who sat many years in the Israeli jail. It's unbelievable. There's not even one time that they didn't reach agreements. Most of the agreements are 2-state solutions, with some kind of modification to answer your question. All the time they reach agreements. Moreover, many times when we have hardliners from the right wing in the Israeli side and hardliners in the Palestinian side, it's much easier to reach agreement than we have leftists. Why? I explained in a scholarly article. Now, the agreement is not important. The most important thing that we saw, that the minds of peace, or this kind of conference, create peace coalitions. The people and the delegation begin to understand the importance of the involvement of the people, the importance of negotiation. And if this is not going to turn into a mass movement, and to create this major congress that could press the leadership to reach agreement, prepare the ground, it's not going to work. Because according to my opinion, if we will be able to succeed to create such a congress, then the leadership will not have any choice, because Netanyahu cannot say, I don't have a coalition, and Abu Mazen cannot say, they're going to kill me, they're going to run to reach agreement. And for this, we need help to create this kind of major congress. Thank you very much.
The history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is structured like a work art. It has elements of a bestseller. The beginning of the conflict is considered to be the first Zionist Congress, which was held in Basel in 1897. The goal became to create for the Jewish people a home in Palestine, which was mostly swampy and uninhabited. The political program was to purchase land, to cultivate it, and to turn it to a flourish garden. However, the growing Jewish presence in Palestine created tensions with the local Arab population, who had their own expectations for independence.
אנו מכריזים בזאת על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל. היא מדינת ישראל.
Following the Israeli Declaration of Independence, Arab armies invaded Israel, and a full-scale war erupted between Israel and its neighboring Arab countries. The 1948 war created about 725,000 refugees who spread out in the region. The climax of the tension and the infinite violent clashes between Israel and the Arab world was the Six-Day War of 1967. Israel took control over Gaza, the West Bank, and unified Jerusalem under its sovereignty. The inability of the Arab states to defeat Israel and the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt led to a situation where the Palestinians became the central player in the confrontation.
القدس هي عاصمة دولة فلسطين، شاء من شاء وأبى من أبى، واللي مش عاجبه يسحب من بحر الأقصى.
The idea of the two states for the two people began to rise when the Israelis, the Palestinians, and the international community started to realize that the Palestinian problem is not going to vanish, and Israel is probably going to survive and continue to play a major role in the region. The beginning was Madrid Conference in 1991, the climax was the Oslo Accords in 1993, and the end was the beginning of the Second Intifada in 2000.
זו שעת גורל לישראל. יש בתוכנית ההתנתקות כדי לקרוע שער למציאות אחרת.
In 2005, Ariel Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel, led an Israeli unilateral withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. There was a severe concern in Israel that the country will experience a civil war. Israel survived, while the Palestinian Authority collapsed. The following events were a bloody Palestinian civil war that led to a split in their society. Since then, Gaza is controlled by the radical Islamist movement Hamas, and the West Bank is administrated by the secular nationalist movement Fatah. A critical element that was missing from almost every peace process in the Israeli-Palestinian situation is the involvement of the people. This major weakness leaves the peace process in the hands of professional politicians, makes it vulnerable to violent episodes carried by radicals, and it does not help the people to overcome psychological barriers such as fear, mistrust, and prejudice. After the birth of my daughter, I understood that there is a moral obligation to translate theoretical research to a practical program that could lead to a drastic change in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a peacemaking revolution. My colleagues and I started conducting small-scale Israeli-Palestinian public negotiating congresses in different locations around the United States, Canada, the West Bank, and lately in Israel. The small congresses are intended to create a domestic and international support for the establishment of a major Israeli-Palestinian public negotiating congress with political power. The Congress is a democratic institution that invites delegations from all walks of life to discuss, debate, and negotiate solutions to the struggle by peaceful means. The Congress is designed to involve the people in the peacemaking process, prepare them for a new social order, and press the leadership to reach agreements. The delegation in the 15 rounds of the small-scale public negotiating congresses included ordinary people from the entire political spectrum. Israeli settlers, Palestinians who sat many years in the Israeli jail for resisting the occupations, Israeli supporters of right-wing parties, students, business people, and people who lost loved ones in the conflict. In each case, the delegation succeeded in generating agreements. Moreover, each assembly succeeded in creating peace coalitions based on commitment to promote the culture of peace. Our purpose is to bring these peacemaking effects to every house in Israel and the Palestinian territories in order to create a massive pressure for the establishment of a major Israeli-Palestinian public negotiating congress. The Congress has the potential to begin a peacemaking revolution, which is so needed in this tragic situation.
We have the entire world now backing a two-state solution. We have Europe, we have Russia, we have the big powers, and we have the United States, and we have the Arab League, and half of Israel. So, and more than half of the Palestinians. As a starting point, that's a lot. You don't need more. You will never have a consensual feeling about a two-state solution. But once you start and people will see results and will not have the desperate feeling that nothing is going to happen, which they have now, there will also be hope and there will be a larger crowd of support.
Because I remember that Yitzhak Rabin, when he was running for prime minister in '92, told me a story about a poll that had been taken among the Israeli public. And the poll showed, the question was, what should happen to the Palestinians? What's your ideal, dream of, and huge numbers of Israelis were asked this question. And, they responded, well, we'd like them just to go away. We'd like them to go to another Arab country. We'd just like to get rid of them. And then the pollster, and Rabin told the story, and I think it indicates something interesting about Rabin. He said, well, that's not possible, the pollster said. That's a dream scenario. It's never going to happen. What's your next best solution. And the same people said, give them a state.
We got to cut for a break. We'll come right back. We're back. I'm Leon Charney, and we are going to have a serious conversation with a group called the Parent Circle. They are a group of people who've come together. Both of them have had casualties in their life. One is Arab, the other is Israeli and Jewish, and they've come together to try and hopefully bring peace and reconciliation and tolerance to the Middle East. And as we say in French, from Baruch, they should be blessed if they can do it. Let me introduce them. Ali Abu Awwad, let me hear your story. You're a Palestinian, correct?
Yes.
All right. Give me your background.
Well, I'm coming from a refugee family. My family has been thrown out of our village in 1948.
Which village?
Likbeba.
Where is that?
It's between Gaza and Hebron in Beit Jibrin area. It's called today Lachish, the Jewish name, the Israeli name for the area. And I grew up in a very political home. My mother used to be involved in Fatah, which is part of BLO. And she has been a few years in the prison, around 5 years as a political prisoner.
Israeli?
Yeah. And I opened my eyes on the first Intifada, and I joined the Intifada. I've been active. And
What year?
From
the first Intifada?
Yeah.
I was sitting with Yitzhak Rabin at the Regency Hotel when the first Intifada began, and I remember he was eating Goldenberg peanut chews. I still remember that. And he was supposed to come home to stop it. Instead, he went to Florida, to the Fontainebleau Hotel, to attend the dinner. So I was on the other side when you were in the Intifada. I'm not an Israeli, I'm an American, but it's just interesting how at that point Yitzhak Rabin didn't think it was going to be a big issue. It's amazing. Okay, I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, it's not the first time that politicians don't know where it will go or where it will take people. Anyway.
Why did you start? Why did you join the Intifada? Give me your reasoning.
Well, there are so many reasons. To grow up as a child.
I'm not that busy. You can tell me a few.
To grow up as a child and to be treated in a very bad way by the occupation, you don't need anybody to teach you how to join such an Intifada. Just make the duty for you. Sometimes I couldn't reach my school when I've been watching how do they treat my mother when they get arrested here. And when she get arrested, beating her in front of my eyes, beating my father, coming to our home, damaging everything. And when I saw all of this killing, and I mean, I couldn't grow up in a normal way. So why should I behave normally as a child? I was 16 years old.
Okay, so you went to the Intifada.
And also, I cannot say that I support violence at that time, because when you throw a stone against 60-ton Merkava tank, it's not violent. In some way, I was sure that I'm not going to damage Israel by throwing stones.
It's rage.
Yeah, so anyway, I've been arrested for 4 years, from 1990, at the end of 1990 until 1994. And we've been released by Oslo Agreement. And I thought that we'll have peace. And because I support Fatah, I'm a member of Fatah, I really support the agreement. But the first condition for part of the prisoners who were released by the agreement is to be in Jericho, not to allow part of them to go back to their houses, to their home, because we've been written as a dangerous people. So I couldn't go back home by this peace agreement, and I still see checkpoint settlement growing up. So where's the peace? I couldn't taste it. So this agreement fell down, but after...
Do you believe in Yasser Arafat as a leader for your people?
Well, I believe actually I believe on my people. I believe in Yasser Arafat, but I believe also that the Palestinian politician power comes from Israel. Yasser Arafat, Abu Mazen cannot control a life of a Palestinian, but one Israeli soldier can control 1 million life of a Palestinian. So how can I believe in anybody if he's not strong?
Occupation equals humiliation. You as a human being, you are humiliated. Humiliated because a foreign power, a foreign officer who speaks different language, who doesn't belong in that land, occupies you, tells you what to do, what you can do, what you can't do. For example, as a Palestinian, we cannot grant our kids national number. This is my ID, and my ID is not issued by the PLO. My ID is issued by the Israeli government. And as you see, I have 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. And this number, their national number, like the Social Security number in the United States, is not granted by the PLO or the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas. It's granted by the Israeli occupation. I am married to an American. Her name is Yvette. I love her. She's my wife. And she lives with me in the Gaza Strip. I don't have the power, or my government doesn't have the power, Mahmoud Abbas doesn't have the power to grant her residency. So occupation affects us Palestinians on the personal level.
And of course the occupation itself in its everyday life, it's absolutely unacceptable on any terms, legal, justice, humanitarian. It doesn't exist in the world, in today's world, and it's a paradox that Israel, of all states, is the one that keeps a very harsh occupation.
But I believe in one thing, that you can sign a lot of agreement on the paper, but if you don't do a preparation on the ground, and the first condition to negotiate for peace is to want peace. You can suggest peace, you can talk about peace, but nobody can know if you want peace or not. But if you want peace, there is a payment there. Are those politicians are willing really to do the peace? Everyone on this table know what is peace in the Middle East. Is to create and to have 2 states, 2 secure states, independent states for both sides, living side by side. This is the political peace. But there is also another peace should be done by the people, process of reconciliation. But people will not be willing to do that as long as their daily condition is very hard. You know, I can be right of 1,000 reasons as a Palestinian, but today I'm willing to be honest also. We recognize Israel. I don't hate the Jew. I hate the occupation. And I think this occupation is killing the Jewish before killing the Palestinian.
And I heard this from President Peres about 15 years ago, that it's okay to have a multinational country, comparing it to the US, as long as we, in terms of our capacity to analyze a statement, the basic assumptions, and understand that a multi-ethnic nation is possible, like the US. But a multinational state calls for problems, especially when one nation, one sub-nation is being discriminated against. And the Israeli Arab, that lots of times self-refers to himself or herself as Palestinian. And the Jewish Israelis refer to them as Palestinians because they are of a different nationality. So we are pushing our own citizens to side with the opponents that you ask me whether we can start even to negotiate with. Do you see the paradox? So we need to start within ourselves and have peace within our own country. Then we'll be a model, a light for the nations, will be that country that we had wanted, we wished to be, our forefathers wanted to be. And as long as we are not there, I don't see how we can bring any message to the region. So to think about a new Middle East prior to that, we need to think about a new Israel.
Hey, tell me about how did your brother get killed?
So, after this agreement, I swallow everything, but I couldn't support anything. I was desperate by violence and by peace also. So, at the second Intifada, people were so desperate, without hope, so we start killing each other in a very crazy way. And around 6,000 families lost their member as a result of the second Intifada, and one of them was my brother. My brother has been stopped in the entry of our village, and a soldier shot him 70 centimeters away from his head, and he killed him without any reason.
How old was he?
He was 32 years old, and he has a son and a daughter. And at that time, I was having my medical treatment because I was shot by an Israeli settler who was passing from Kiryat Arba settlement to Jerusalem, shooting people through the window of his car. And I've been to Saudi Arabia for medical treatment. So with all of this history, with all of this...
All right, but today, you're here with an Israeli, Robi, and we'll get her story in a minute. Do you love her today?
Robi?
Yeah.
I think love is not enough for me, what I feel to Robi. And I don't know what happened to me. You know what? Maybe I gave up trying to be right. I gave up identified with many things. The identity today for me is the human case. And I learned a lot from Robi and about Robi. Today, I think that as long as we don't know each other, we should not love each other. It's not a condition to love each other. But I think I really, not just Robi, there are so many people that I love today in Israel.
Israelis.
Because I love Palestine. If I love Palestine, I should love Robi.
All right, Robi, it's pretty heartfelt what he talked about. You're an Israeli, you immigrated from South Africa. You were a Zionist, I assume. Why else would you emigrate unless you didn't like Mandela or something?
Well, actually, when I left Israel, it was before Mandela's time.
It was
My uncle actually defended Mandela.
Really?
In the treason trial, but they were quite pleased to see the back of me when I left. So it's nothing to do with that. I didn't change. You know, I have always...
But you were a Zionist.
Well, I don't really know. You know, the term of Zionism is a very dangerous term to use and always misinterpreted. I love Israel. I think there is nothing more important for the Jewish people. Well, I actually came to Israel in the '67 war. I thought I was coming to save the country.
You were?
And I was a volunteer, and I stayed. I just stayed.
Okay.
Yes, and I have a tremendous love and a tremendous appreciation of what Israel is all about and what we need. However, I think that the occupation is creating a situation where the moral fiber of Israel is being deteriorated over the past couple of years. If you look at the domestic violence, if you look at the road rage, if you look at the way young soldiers who have to stand at roadblocks, who've hardly even begun to shave, are now running away to India and to South America and coming home on a Friday night to a Shabbat dinner and going off with their father's car and getting drunk. There is a consequence of the occupation. I'm not saying it's only the occupation, but I can tell you that it is affecting our moral fiber.
Bibi Netanyahu knows very well that only the two-state solution will save and guarantee the Zionist idea that he really believes in, because he's a real Zionist. So for Zionism, two-state solution is the only solution. Otherwise, it wouldn't be neither a Jewish or a democratic or a liberal state as Zionists wanted to create here. And Abu Mazen knows very well that that is maybe one of the last chances for having a real Palestinian national state, because if that will be failed, whatever, we don't know what will be in the future. So there is some chance in this process. Maybe it may be in contrast to the image that it's being imposed on them.
All right, tell me your story. You lost a son. How did you lose your son?
David was a student at Tel Aviv University, and He was studying for his master's in the philosophy of education. And he was called to go to the reserves. You know, my family had always been brought up with very liberal ideas. And he came to talk to me and he said, "What shall I do? I don't want to serve in the occupied territories. But if I don't go, the kids that I'm teaching philosophy, who are going into the army in 2 months, what will actually happen to them? What kind of an example am I? And if I don't go, I let my soldiers down," because he was the officer. "And if I do go, I will treat people with respect. And so will all my soldiers." So you see, there isn't this black and white. There's this huge gray pressure on kids. And what are we doing to our children? And then I met a Palestinian 3 months ago who'd come through the roadblock where David was. And he said to me, "I want to tell you something. I came through the roadblock and there was this beautiful young man who came to talk to me, and he said, 'I'm sorry, I have to look at your papers. It's my duty. It's like paying income tax.' And when he was killed the next day, this guy told me, 'I remembered your son all along.'"
Where was he killed?
He was killed in Wadi Haramia, which is near to Ofra. It's a settlement. And it was by a sniper who they've caught in the meantime, and I am going through a process of reconciliation with the family.
A Palestinian sniper. Unbelievable. All right, we're going to cut for a break, and then we'll come back and try to find how these two people got together and how they share such a common bond now. Ali says it's better than love, and if I ask Robi, I'm sure she'll say the same thing. So when you hear these stories, you know, it's heartbreaking. Why do people have to get killed in order to, people will come to a sense of, or a state of mind where they want to have peace. It's incredible. I went through this period during the Yom Kippur War when I was over in Israel, and we did a film about it. It's called Special Counsel. Makes no sense, but we'll be right back. We're back. We're talking with Ali and Robi, who have incredible stories, but not unusual in the Middle East. Robi's son was killed by a Palestinian sniper, and Ali's brother was killed by an Israeli soldier. So now you got together, Robi. How did you get together? What is it called, first of all?
It's called the Parents Circle Families Forum, and we were a group of more than 500 Palestinian and Israeli families, more than sort of half-half, who have all trying to create a framework for a future reconciliation process. You know, you can sign any agreements.
Yeah.
Not going to work without that.
I know.
So last year we did, for instance, 1,000 lectures in schools in both Israel and in Palestine, where we go in together and talk to kids age 17 before they go to the army.
Do they let you in to Israel,
Yes.
Ali? It's not a problem for you to come into Israel?
I had a monthly permission by the parent circle. We ask from the army to get a permission.
And you got it? And you meet? Does the army know you're doing this, by the way?
Yes.
It's not just us. There is so many people in the group doing the same thing.
I understand, but you formed an organization
Yes.
which is getting powerful and stronger. And
The only solution, only practical and doable solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a two-state solution. Both nations are very proud nation, very nationalistic in their views. So the two-state solution has its clear terms. Unlike any other solution, the two-state solution depends on the notion of two states for two people. The borders are already defined. The borders are the 1967 borders, known as the Green Line. Jerusalem will be divided into a Palestinian capital and a Jewish capital. When it comes to the Israeli settlements, they should be, most of them will be dismantled. And the problems that centers around the borders and the settlements that Israel wanted to return, this can be dealt with through a mechanism known as land swap. And then the most important issue and the essence of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the thorniest issue is the refugees issue. And that should be dealt with in accordance with the Arab Peace Initiative, which more than 80 countries, Arabs and Muslims, had signed into, including Saudi Arabia, including Iran. And the language when it comes to the refugees is very clear. A negotiated, agreed upon solution to the refugees problem. And Abu Mazen was very clear, our President Mahmoud Abbas, in an interview to the Israeli TV, he said, I was born in Safad, I just want to go visit Safad. I don't want to practice the right of return. Palestine for me is Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. So the terms are very clear when it comes to the two-state solution. And on our side, we have President Mahmoud Abbas, who is Nelson Mandela. And on the Israeli side, I would love to see, as a supporter of two-state solution, a Friedrich de Klerk of South Africa.
What are the political people saying? Your people, Abu Mazen, is he for this? Does he know that you're doing this?
Well, the first political support has been given to the parent circle by Arafat. He signed a letter when the Israeli bereaved families met him in Ramallah because they came through a project of donating blood to each other. A group of an Israeli and a group of Palestinian donate in the other side blood. And they asked Rami Hanan.
But it's historic that the Israeli medical people have helped a lot of Palestinians even after.
That's
the
right.
Palestinians also gave blood to the Israelis, and the Palestinian who just lost his son, who was shot by the Israeli soldiers, donated the body to for medical purposes.
Yeah, I know. All right, Israel politically, do they accept what you're doing? Do they like it? The Meretz Party, I'm sure.
It's interesting because they'll even allow us to go into jails now to talk to political prisoners. How can they not like what we're doing when it's reconciliation? You know, I mean, it doesn't make very much sense. Both of us have credit. We've paid the highest price to say the stuff that we say.
That's right.
So, and there is a rippling effect of reconciliation.
What's the feeling in Palestine, in the West Bank? Is that where you live now? Where do you live now, Ali? Is there a grassroots feeling that this thing should go on and maybe this can make the politicians come to peace? Is there a feeling that this is really working?
Yeah, I can give you an example. Just 1 week ago, they got the decision of the High Court in Israel to stop the war in Belayim area, which was the area that Israeli and Palestinian active on the ground in a non-violent long process 2 years ago, I think. And they got the decision at last to stop the war. So it works. And I think most of the Palestinians and the Israelis are not involved in weapon and violence and gun. But on the other hand, they are not doing anything. So we need just to reach.
All right, I say one thing. I want your opinion. I say that, and I say it all the time, peace in the Middle East basically will come when the clergy in the mosque on Friday preach it and when the rabbis in the synagogue on Saturday preach it. Do you believe that?
No.
Okay, what do you believe? Political?
I believe that peace will come because, and I think it's actually happening. Please don't think that I'm some kind of innocent.
No, I don't think you are.
I'm pretty pragmatic about what I'm saying, and I think the situation has got to a point where it's untenable for both sides. And therefore they are looking for a way.
You believe that, Ali?
Yeah, I believe in that because I think we believe in ourselves. I don't believe in the situation, but I believe in ourselves. And I know that for myself, I found my way now to do something. I was stuck. I was stuck with this pain. I was stuck with hatred.
I wish you, obviously, great luck, and so does the whole world.